Okay, here we go with Chapter 10, Red Kayak. In Chapter 9, Brady had gone out on the water with his dad, trying to, hopefully thinking that his dad would talk with him a little bit about what happened with Ben. But at the end of the chapter, Brady absolutely flipped out and started throwing all the crabs back into the water that his dad and him had worked so hard to get throughout the day. So here we go, Chapter 10. Brady, stop! Dad hollered. But by the time he saw me dumping the crabs, there were only 2 bushels left. What are you doing? He demanded, seizing my wrist with one hand and the basket with his other. I couldn't look at him. Brady! All I felt was empty inside, empty and removed, as though it wasn't even me who was standing there. What's going on? He shouted at me. I cringed, but I couldn't answer. Disgusted, Dad threw down my hand and kicked the last 2 baskets up toward the front of the boat. I heard him cuss under his breath, but then nothing more. Silence as we rowed home on the boat. Neither Mom nor Dad knew what to say or how to start a conversation with me, so I went to my room down the hall and I listened to my parents' hushed voices. Off the deep end. I don't know. For crying out loud. But I'm worried, Tom. And then I heard my mother call Carl and ask him to come over. I waited inside the door, biting my thumbnail. It hit me then how my parents couldn't talk to me. It's like they wanted to help, but they didn't know how. When Mom finished and hung up the phone, I heard her say that Carl had to be in Easton for a meeting, but that he'd stop by on the way. I was relieved Carl was coming. I changed and waited for him in the kitchen. And when he came in, he had my parka, the one I had wrapped around Ben. My mother took it and gave Carl back the jacket the police officer had lent me. It occurred to me that she must have quietly gotten rid of Ben's jacket too, that and his life jacket. I hadn't seen them around the house. Carl and I pulled out chairs at the kitchen table. We're going to get a pizza, Mom said as she and my father came through the room. We'll bring it back, Carl, if you want to stay and eat with us. Thanks, I'm all set, Carl replied. Mom picked up her purse. As Dad put his cap on and opened the door for her, I thought how easy he'd been on me considering what I had done. All that work, and he brought home a measly 2 bushels. I began to feel unbelievably stupid and ungrateful for doing that to him, to us. What I did affected the whole family. After my parents were gone, Carl unzipped his brown leather jacket and rested his strong arms on the table. He seemed just a little bit uncomfortable, but I was sure that he would say the right thing. Carl is one smart person, and he's got a good heart, too. If anyone had the answer, it was him. I remember once when Carl worked with the toll facilities police, how he stopped a woman from jumping off the Chesapeake Bay Bridge just by talking to her. He never told me exactly what he said. None of those guys are supposed to talk about it, but whatever it was, it must have been good, so I listened up even if I didn't look up. Carl pressed his fingers together. You know, he finally began, every time we get a call, Brady, like a car accident or a hunting incident and somebody dies at the scene, it's very distressing to us. I lifted my eyes. Even though we know someone has died, we keep going back to recheck, to make sure the person has, passed on. It's a little like we can't quite believe it. He shrugged. Can't quite accept it. Because see, he opened his hands, here we have all this training, all this skill, and sometimes it's simply too late. Or for some reason, it wasn't meant to be. It wasn't necessarily our fault because we didn't get there in time. Carl paused. In the end, there isn't anything more we can do. We just need to put it behind us so we can move on to the next one. And if we didn't, we would be totally burned out. You need to do the same thing, Brady, he said, waiting until our eyes connected. You need to talk it out. People have these feelings, you know. You need to talk it out and put it behind you so that you can move forward. I looked away again, but I knew Carl needed me to respond. A little nod was all I could manage. I didn't know how to express what I was feeling, which, as far as I could tell then, was a combination of guilt for what I hadn't done, anger because of what did happen, and enormous sadness for Ben and his family. Maybe that's what I should have told him. It took me a while, but I was getting my thoughts together when Carl stood up. He shouldn't have stood up. Another few seconds, maybe I could have gotten something out. "You sure you don't want to talk about it?" he asked. It was obvious he needed to get going because he glanced at his watch. I nodded again. I didn't want to hold him back. "Look, I gotta run, Brady. But if you change your mind and want to talk, give me a holler. You know where I am." I stared at the table, disappointed, while Carl zipped up his jacket. "Wait," I said when Carl reached for the door handle, because there was one thing I had to know. He turned around. "I just wondered what happened. I mean, why did Ben die?" I felt my voice quaver. "I thought you guys had a pulse." Carl came back to the table and he sat down. He forced me to look at him. "We did have a pulse, Brady. There is no question. You brought him back." I swallowed hard. I hoped Carl wouldn't think less of me for getting tears in my eyes. But he had a lot of water in his lungs, and it gave him pneumonia, what they call aspiration pneumonia, Carl explained. That on top of the exposure, it was too much. I dropped my eyes again and was trying really hard to hold everything in. Carl cleared his throat a little. "He went fast, they tell me. Kids, when they go down, they go fast." I wiped at my eyes with the heel of my hand. "Don't beat yourself, Brady," Carl said. "You did a great thing. You tried. You gave it your best, and that's what matters." Carl ended up staying until my parents came back with the pizza, but then he left. Mom and Dad still seemed worried about me. Dad even said I could hang out at home again the next day if I wanted, but I guess the talk with Carl did me a little good after all, because what I said was, "Thanks, but it's time to move on." I tried. I tried the best I could. In my room, I put away the bag of Legos and slid my heavy backpack over to my desk. I took a shower, reviewed material for the social studies exam I had missed, and I hung a clean shirt on the drawer pull of my bureau. But at school the next day, I couldn't seem to pick up where I'd left off. I knew I avoided looking at people. I just wanted to be invisible, but I couldn't, because a lot of kids came up to me and said that they were sorry and it's too bad about what happened. They were just being nice, I know, but I couldn't think of what to say back. Plus, I didn't feel as though I belonged in school that day. Everybody else was in a good mood because of it being Friday and spring break was the following week. But I just wanted to find JT then, and I wanted to be left alone. I waited for JT at his locker during 6-minute break, but he never showed up. So I went on to social studies by myself, knowing that I would see him there in class. I was supposed to sleep over at JT's house that night, only I was thinking of backing out on him because I just wasn't up for it. Then again, I thought, it might be good to watch a movie and play a bunch of video games and stuff. I don't know, I was mixed up. So when I saw JT finally come through the door, I was relieved. "Hey," I said when JT took the seat beside me where he always sits. "How you doing?" he asked. "Not so good," I replied, rolling my eyes. "It's been really awful." JT nodded. "Yeah, I'll bet." I thought he was going to say something else, but he didn't. He sort of paused, reached into his backpack, and he pulled up a book on his desk. He started looking through it like he was searching for homework or something, but we didn't have any that I knew of. "JT," I said, "about tonight." "Tonight?" "Yeah, you wanted me to come over, remember?" "Oh, gee," he replied before getting this weird look, like he just remembered something. "Tonight, Brady, I don't think we can do it." "It's no big deal," I said, trying to make light of it. After all, I was relieved, wasn't I? "Well, we've got all next week off," I said. "We can do something later." JT shot a quick glance at me. "Actually, we won't be home. We're going down to North Carolina to visit my aunt and uncle." I stared at him because JT's family hardly ever went anywhere on account of their chicken farm. He must have known what I was thinking. "Well, yeah, my dad's not going." And just then our teacher, Mr. Figley, came in the room and loudly closed the door so we'd all shut up. After class, I spoke briefly with Mr. Figley about making up the test that I had missed, and then I tried to catch up with JT just for the walk downstairs. He went to Spanish and I went to math, but he had slipped into the crowd and disappeared. Later in the hall, between third and fourth periods, I saw Digger, and I know he saw me because I watched him do a double take and then turn a complete 180. And then back at my locker, when I stopped to switch books, Kate came up to me. She was still on crutches because of her ankle, so her friend Ryan carried her backpack. "I'm sorry about Ben," she said. "Yeah, me too. It's really sad," Ryan added. "Thanks," I muttered. Kate had her hair pulled up and back in two ponytails like a little kid, but it was cute. When I bent down to pick up my books, she said, "So I guess we'll see you tonight. Mom said you're coming over." Surprised, I straightened up. "I thought you guys were going to North Carolina." Kate's eyes widened. "What are you talking about?" "Well, JT said..." And then it hit me fast. JT had made up the story because he didn't want me over. "Never mind, I'm just confused," I mumbled, scrambling to figure out why. I guess I get mixed up." Ryan was nudging Kate. "Yeah, we gotta go," Kate said. "Well, see you, Brady." "See ya," I said. But as she hobbled away with Ryan, I stood there wondering, why would JT lie to me? And why would Digger not even want to talk to me? I needed to get to class. Lockers slammed. Everybody was hustling. Ernie Bodkin knocked my shoulder as he rushed by, but I stood there staring. I didn't get it. The bell rang. I was going to be late, but I didn't much care because I just didn't get it. And that's chapter 10.